What if I told you that one family controls more wealth than most entire countries, sits on a quarter of the world's oil reserves, and their decisions can literally crash global economies overnight? Welcome to the story of the House of Saud, where ancient traditions meet modern power, and where a single throne is worth more than $1 trillion. History isn't just a collection of dates, it's the story of how we got here. Subscribe to this channel and join us as we uncover the forgotten legends and pivotal moments that shaped our world. Don't let the past stay buried, hit the notification bell to witness history come alive. Picture this, it's 1932, and a tribal leader named Abdulaziz ibn Saud stands in the scorching Arabian desert, surveying a land that most of the world considers worthless sand. Fast forward 90 years, and his descendants now control an empire that makes the pharaohs look poor. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming: it wasn't just about finding oil. It was about weaponizing religion, politics, and economics in a way that would reshape the entire Middle East and beyond. The Saudi royal family didn't just stumble into power. They engineered one of the most brilliant political strategies in human history, and understanding their playbook reveals secrets about how real power actually works in our modern world. By the end of this video, you'll see why every major world leader has to pay attention when Saudi Arabia speaks, and why their trillion-dollar throne might be both their greatest asset and their biggest vulnerability. Let's start with the foundation of everything, the unholy alliance that created modern Saudi Arabia. In the 1740s, long before oil was even discovered, Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, a conservative Islamic preacher, made a deal with Muhammad ibn Saud, a local tribal leader. This wasn't just a casual partnership. Wahhab offered religious legitimacy, and Saud offered military protection. Together, they created Wahhabism, an ultra-conservative interpretation of Islam that would become the ideological backbone of Saudi power. Think about the genius of this move. Religion has always been one of the most powerful tools for controlling populations, but the Sauds took it further. They didn't just use religion for control. They became the religion's protectors and promoters. This gave them something more valuable than military might: divine legitimacy. When you can claim God is on your side, opposition becomes not just political rebellion, but religious heresy. This religious foundation became absolutely crucial when Abdulaziz ibn Saud began his conquest of the Arabian Peninsula in the early 1900s. He wasn't just fighting for territory, he was fighting a holy war. His warriors, called the Ikhwan, believed they were spreading the true faith. This religious motivation made them incredibly fierce fighters, willing to die for their cause. By 1932, Abdulaziz had united most of the peninsula under his rule, creating the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Just as the Sauds were consolidating their religious and political power, American geologists were discovering something that would change everything: oil. Massive amounts of it. In 1938, they struck black gold, and suddenly this desert kingdom was sitting on liquid wealth beyond imagination. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. World War II was about to reshape global politics, and the world was going to need oil. Lots of it. The Sauds found themselves holding the ultimate bargaining chip right when the world's superpowers desperately needed what they had. Enter one of the most consequential meetings in modern history. In February 1945, President Franklin Roosevelt met with King Abdulaziz aboard the USS Quincy in the Suez Canal. This wasn't just diplomacy, this was the birth of the petrodollar system that still dominates global economics today. The deal was simple but revolutionary: America would protect Saudi Arabia militarily, and in return, Saudi Arabia would sell oil exclusively in US dollars and invest their profits in American banks and businesses. This agreement created what economists call the petrodollar recycling system. Every time someone anywhere in the world buys oil, they have to use US dollars. This artificially inflates demand for American currency, giving the United States enormous economic power. But it also made Saudi Arabia incredibly wealthy and strategically indispensable to American interests. The numbers are staggering. Today, Saudi Arabia controls approximately 17% of global oil reserves. Their state-owned company, Saudi Aramco, is worth more than Apple, Google, and Microsoft combined. The royal family's personal wealth is estimated at over $1 trillion, making them collectively the richest family on earth. But wealth is just the beginning of their power. Here's what makes the House of Saud truly unique: they've managed to maintain absolute monarchy in an age of democracy. While revolutions toppled kings and queens across the globe, the Sauds have not only survived but thrived. How do they do it? Through a carefully orchestrated system that combines religious authority, economic distribution, and strategic alliances. The religious component cannot be overstated. Saudi Arabia controls Mecca and Medina, the two holiest cities in Islam. Every year, millions of Muslims make pilgrimage to these cities, generating enormous religious soft power. The Saudi king doesn't just call himself a monarch, he's the custodian of the two holy mosques. This isn't just a title, it's a claim to religious leadership over 1.8 billion Muslims worldwide. This religious authority allows them to export their conservative Wahhabi interpretation of Islam globally. Since the 1970s oil boom, Saudi Arabia has spent over $100 billion building mosques, Islamic schools, and cultural centers around the world. They're not just spreading religion. They're spreading their version of religion, creating ideological influence that extends far beyond their borders. But religion alone doesn't maintain power. The Sauds also mastered the art of economic distribution. Oil revenues fund a massive welfare state that provides free healthcare, education, and generous subsidies to Saudi citizens. Unemployment benefits, housing allowances, and even marriage bonuses keep the population relatively content. It's essentially a social contract. Political submission in exchange for economic security. However, this system is more fragile than it appears. The Saudi economy is almost entirely dependent on oil, making them vulnerable to price fluctuations. When oil prices crashed in 2014, the government budget deficit exploded, forcing them to cut subsidies and implement new taxes. Suddenly, the social contract started looking less attractive to ordinary Saudis. Enter Mohammed bin Salman, known as MBS, the crown prince who's trying to revolutionize Saudi Arabia before it's too late. His Vision 2030 plan aims to diversify the economy away from oil dependence, modernize society, and attract international investment. This includes allowing women to drive, opening movie theaters, and even planning futuristic cities like Neom. But here's the catch: modernization threatens the very religious conservatism that gives the Sauds their legitimacy. How do you modernize society while maintaining religious authority? How do you open up economically while preserving political control? MBS is essentially trying to solve an impossible equation, and the results have been mixed at best. His modernization efforts have generated international attention and some foreign investment, but they've also created internal tensions. Conservative religious leaders are uncomfortable with social changes, while younger Saudis are frustrated that political reforms haven't accompanied social ones. Meanwhile, his aggressive foreign policy, including the war in Yemen and the blockade of Qatar, has cost enormous amounts of money and damaged Saudi Arabia's international reputation. The murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018 exemplified these contradictions. While MBS promoted his image as a reformer, his government was accused of assassinating a critic in their own consulate. This incident damaged Saudi Arabia's carefully cultivated international image and showed how authoritarian instincts clash with modernization goals. Looking toward the future, the House of Saud faces unprecedented challenges. Climate change and renewable energy threaten to reduce global oil demand, potentially undermining their primary source of wealth and power. A growing young population expects economic opportunities that the current system struggles to provide. Regional rivals like Iran and Turkey are challenging Saudi influence across the Middle East. Perhaps most importantly, the global political landscape is shifting. The United States is becoming less dependent on Middle Eastern oil due to domestic production increases. China is becoming a more important economic partner, but Chinese support comes with different conditions and expectations. The Sauds can no longer assume automatic American protection, forcing them to navigate an increasingly multipolar world. The trillion-dollar question is whether the House of Saud can successfully adapt to these challenges or whether their system contains the seeds of its own destruction. Their combination of religious authority, economic power, and strategic alliances has worked for nearly a century, but history shows that no system is permanent. What makes this story particularly fascinating is how it reveals the mechanics of modern power. The Sauds understood that lasting influence requires multiple sources of legitimacy: religious, economic, and geopolitical. They've shown how a relatively small country can punch far above its weight by controlling essential resources and strategic relationships. Whether you admire their political skills or criticize their authoritarian methods, the House of Saud has created one of the most successful political dynasties in modern history. Their story demonstrates how traditional power structures can adapt to modern realities, but also shows the inherent tensions in trying to maintain absolute authority in an interconnected world. The next decade will likely determine whether the trillion-dollar throne can survive the transition to a post-oil world, or whether the very success that built their empire will ultimately lead to its transformation. From the ancient library archives in Alexandria, Egypt, to the digital records we build today, history is a torch passed from one generation to the next. By watching, you've helped keep that flame alive. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a descent into the past. Before you go, let us know in the comments, which historical figure's shoes would you want to walk in? Until next time, keep exploring.